Thank you all for those truly wonderful and thought-provoking and stimulating and disturbing contributions. They were wonderful. Another round of applause, I think, for the contributors. We now have 25 minutes for contributions from the floor. Sarah's going to be doing the timekeeping, so I would ask you once again to stick to the 90-second, I nearly said 90-minute, 90-second contribution time limit. And if you could just say your name when I call on you. And I think I'm going to call first on Annie Ryan. Where are you, Annie? Somewhere on the floor. She's here.
She's a show tonight, so she's probably in the theatre.
Hi, I'm going to actually step out here because I'm going to a technical rehearsal that I'm late for. Because I'm doing a play. Not in the National Theatre. So, I wrote all this down, but okay. So this is very emotional for all of us because the nature of our work in theatre is to address what's the most important thing in us, what matters most deeply. And when we write plays or make plays or design plays or act in plays, we draw on this place in ourselves that is the most important thing. And so when we come to programming the work, it's a different matter and it's a real risk because we want the plays that we program to be robust. You know, we want people to come. We want people to like it. We want it to be achievable in, 4 weeks or whatever crappy process you've set out for yourself. And the problem with being robust, we want the plays to be on solid ground. But being on solid ground is not what the work is. The work is not on solid ground. The work is about being the rug being ripped from underneath you. That's the nature of what we do. And I'm looking forward to today, look at us today, where the conversation is no longer on the surface of things. We're no longer talking about safe programming decisions. And I'm very much looking forward to watching all of us grow and share our stories, all of our stories, in much deeper waters. Thank you.
I think D is next. D Kinahan? D Kinahan, yes. Where are you, D? There.
I'm here. Thank you very much. My name is Deirdre Kinahan, and I'm in the extraordinary position of being a playwright, a feminist, and a member of the board of the Abbey Theatre. And I want to say that I welcome this conversation with all of my heart. On a personal level, I've worked in theatre for 16 years, and I always felt I laboured under a gender bias. I couldn't understand it, but I felt it. And being an artist, I trusted that feeling. I trusted my gut. The statistics quickly showed me that they were there to back me up. So I, like many other women, raised gender bias at board level, at conferences, on platforms, and in the media when they were discussing my plays and my work. But I was always made to feel a little bit like a screamer in the corner because it wasn't a popular viewpoint. And what is amazing about Waking the Feminists is that this movement has brought the argument center stage. Women are no longer in the corner looking in, but back at the very heart of everything we do. And arguments that I had to listen to less than 3 weeks ago, such as, I know it's not great, but percentage-wise it's pretty much akin to UK theatres, just no longer stand because the world has turned and the ground has shifted and we all want better. Women do not write lesser plays. Women are not lesser artists and women are not lesser citizens. The challenge now for all of us, board and sector included, is what action we take to implement change. Because change is what's good for the Abbey Theatre. Change is what's good for artists and art across every genre. And change is what's good for Irish society. There have been a few false starts for feminism in the 100 years that Ireland has existed. I truly hope that Waking the Feminists is a new beginning.
Okay, and hear to that. And now, if you want to speak, I think there's somebody here in the third row with a hand up. If you just put up your hand, and I'll do my best to see. So in the front row, and then back there. Is there? Yeah, if you can speak from there. I think there's a mic coming down to you. And if you could just say your name.
My name is Nuala Hayes, and I want to say thank you very much to everybody for their contribution. I grew up in this theatre. I love this theatre. I love the Abbey Theatre. I worked here in the late 60s and the early 70s, and it was a very exciting place to work then because it was responding to the ferment that was happening in the country, to the growth of feminism, to the explosion of problems in the north. And there were some very, very exciting and good women did work in this theatre, and men, I have to say. I always, at that time, we were very much aware of how this theatre was founded, how it grew out of ideals, and very much the work of Lady Geraghty as she worked with the founders of the theatre and how central she was to the existence of this theatre. I was also here when the first woman was appointed artistic director. That was Lelia Doolan. And I was also here when I heard, it loudly proclaimed on the top corridor by a man who was on the board, a well-known Dublin man, to say no woman could ever run the National Theatre. And sadly, he was right, because the forces turned against Lelia, who wanted to make great changes here. And I think that was her demise, that she wanted to make changes. Many years have passed. I am well past the stage of thinking there could be changes. I'm one of those artists, actors, performers who actually accepted what was. I changed my approach to life and theatre, and I tried to create my own work. So this is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful day. But I would also like to say that it is to the credit of the theatre, to the Abbey itself, that it's happening here, that it's not outside on the streets. That's all I'd like to say.
Another person had indicated, yes, just up there in the grey jumper. Sorry, it's hard to see from here. There's a mic coming up to you now. And again, if you can just keep your contributions brief. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, should I stand up?
Do.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Emer McHugh. I'm a PhD student at NUIG, and I'm a theatre goer. And, okay, it's just going to be brief. I'm a woman, but I'm also a queer woman. I'm also a disabled woman. When am I ever going to see any of my stories on the stage? When am I ever going to see queer voices, queer women writing like plays that reflect anything that's been anything like in my life or anything like that? And today has been so exciting and so emotional, because it's just a case of no one can really put up with this anymore. So thank you. Thank you very much.
There's a speaker down here with we'll go to you first, I think, since the mic is up there, just above, just there, and then to the front row, towards the front row.
Hi, thanks a million. My name is Ella Clark. I've worked on the Abbey stage. I've worked in theatre for 23 years. I've worked on the Abbey stage as a performer, but also many times as a choreographer. And I would like to add the voice of dance to the house of theatre, if possible. Thanks. I just want to say that in an art form, we need our voices heard, but also the objectification of women's bodies has been going on for, centuries at this point, and our art form offers a way to readdress the assumptions created and concerning women's bodies, but also that I ask that that dance is not treated as something that supports your art form, but also in its own right stands alone and is a theatrical art form. We are women of theatre too. Thanks very much.
Thank you. We have a mic in the front row. If you could just stand up. Thanks. Sorry, if that's okay.
My name is Kathleen O'Neill, and I'm a working class activist working on the margins and living on the margins. And I'd like to join our struggle to this assembly today and give a big fair fucks to you all for what... It's the highest accolade a Northsider can give. So it's a huge fair fucks, but there's a rider with it as well. I want to bring the class word into the debate, and somebody also said that the feminist... And this isn't critical, this is fact. The feminist movement itself isn't heterogeneous. We, working class women, we're having our own struggles within that movement. But we share with you the struggles of funding and recognition. And in our case, because we're so far back on the margins, we're relegated to community art, so we get less and less and less. One positive thing is that I'm part of the Abbey outreach programme, so at least the Abbey is coming to Kilbarrack and it is coming to the margins, and it's up to us to grow that. But we have to grow today as well. 267 women took part in the Rising. There were 1,000 insurgents altogether. 260 of them were involved. 267 were involved. We can't name but 7, I think, and that's the sad state of affairs coming into the anniversary of it. I just want to note that. But sitting on that stage, you talked about your lack of resources and your lack of recognition. Believe me, you have much more than we have. And I want, in terms of adjoining our struggle to yours, remember the bread and butter issues, remember the social class issues. And if we haven't the resources to do an assembly like this, but if you see us in our own struggles, support us as well within the feminist movement. So I want to give you not only awakening, but a bit of a knock like, hey sisters, we're here as well. And it's tough on the margins.
And I just want to acknowledge my old friend Kathleen. I'm sorry I didn't recognise you in the front row, but just to acknowledge the huge amount of work Kathleen has done on so many issues, and in particular on the campaign which we've been involved with together for many years, Repeal the 8th Amendment. So well done, Kathleen. And speaker here.
Hello, my name is Brenda Donoghue. I've done some research on this area. I just want to say 2 things. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. I want to say that I don't want to hear ever again, but there's no plays by women, or, where are they? Or I can't think of any. There's plenty of work in the canon. It's in there in the archives. We need to pull it out. There's plenty of work by women working now and working in the recent past. It's there. Let's use it. Secondly, I want to say the problem is systemic, and so we need to tackle it on all levels of the system. So I'm talking about talking to the Abbey management, looking at the board, looking at the Arts Council, and talking to the department as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to add a couple of points that as regional theatre makers, it's not always possible for us to come up to Dublin. And there's a huge lack of resources in the regions for making theatre. We're theatre makers. We need theatres to make our work in. We can't make it in our bedroom. So I think that that's a huge, that we need to use the weight of today to put pressure on the government to see the value of the work that we're doing. And to if we were women scientists, we'd all be getting free laptops on the way in, that what we do is really, really important, and that has to go out to the regions as well. That's all I want to say.
Okay, stage just behind you there, and then we're going to go to the sides, because I'm conscious we haven't heard from either the marginalised sides of the auditorium yet.
I was one of the marginalised sides, but I was told to come down here that Ivana couldn't
That was
see
a wise
anything.
move.
Back
I
where
can't see if you're up there.
Anyway, my name is Susan Liddy. I lecture in Merrimack College, University of Limerick.
And you had a great letter in the paper.
Oh, yes,
Sorry,
thank you very much. Yeah. My interest, I was going to say, is obviously women in film would be where I'm coming from, but I am so energised by this today. We were outside. I couldn't even get in. I travelled from Limerick this morning. But we were just, thank you for your contributions, really, thank you. Now, I want to say something that I think unites all of us a problem, no matter where we're writing for. And actually, it was on Morning Ireland, it came up again as recently as this morning. Here's the thing. They say to us, if you weren't on the list, the short list, or they say in film, if you weren't produced, clearly the quality was not there. It wasn't good enough. I think we need a bigger debate, not today, but we need a debate on what is quality. Who is deciding what is quality? Within a gender order, there will be stories that are deemed to be universal. There will be characters that are deemed to speak to every man. Women are often, as we know, sidelined as niche, or, you know, not speaking the big speak. I believe that has to be rigorously debated, and I believe it has to be monitored. I am not saying you have to throw out the concept of quality altogether, but I think it can be used as a very convenient stick to explain away the invisibility of women and closing off our voices. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone on that side? If there's somebody who'd like to speak from yes, yeah, yourself.
My name is Carmel Winters, and I'm a playwright and a filmmaker. And I'm a woman lover. And I'm going to invite everyone here today to become a woman lover, and particularly women producers. Start thinking of the women you're not producing. I'm also one of the 5 Irish women writers that has been produced by the Abbey in the last 9 years. I am in a profoundly ironic position in that the Abbey has been my main support in those years, even though I have fought with Fiach. I fought with you privately, Fiach. I've questioned your judgment. I've questioned why we can't be in conversation about why my plays have been rejected. I've done it privately, and I'm inviting people to do it publicly. And I want to talk to the other women. Become woman lovers. How can you expect men to be women lovers when you yourselves do not look to the women?
On that side before we go over to the other side.
Yes, Evelyn Conlon, and I would like to say that today is, of course, a wonderful day. I was going to just remind us that we should think of the women who helped form this theatre, and also the women who packed the Mansion House in 1937 in order to protest against the anti-women bias of the proposed constitution. The reason I bring this up is that if we don't remember the history, today will again become a flash in the pan and will disappear. I would also remind you about what the last speaker said, that we as novelists, for instance, must always remember what Eilish Ní Ghuimhne wrote to the Irish Times one day when we were informed as a country that Irish women writers had not dealt with the issues of, for instance, the famous Celtic tiger. What they had actually meant was that none of the 3 fellas that they knew had actually written about it. And she listed about 15 women, including playwrights, who had. Anyway, let us remember our history, and that might help us not to let this happen again.
Thank you. Okay, I'm told there's somebody else on this side, and then we'll definitely go over to the other side. Okay.
Hello, my name is Grace Dias, and I'm an artist and an activist. I'm a theatre writer and a theatre director, and I'm one of the hundreds of women who haven't had their work produced here. I guess over the last couple of weeks I've been watching this movement unfold, and I've been thinking about my own work and how my work is very much like Kathleen was talking about giving voice to the voiceless. And I've sort of started to reflect on how maybe I'm not able to give voice to myself. Maybe I'm not able to stick up for myself. And I want to thank all the women on the stage who've spoken for me today when I couldn't speak for myself. Thank you very much. And that's one of the really powerful things that theatre can do, and it was beautiful to see that happen today, and to see it happen on the main stage, which we're often very worried about what can happen there, so it was great that was happening on the main stage and not in the basement. The other thing I wanted to say is that for me, I've experienced gender bias. I mean, it's hard to know, you never know, is that what's going on, and sometimes you like to pretend that it's not. But I've also experienced out and out misogyny. And I've had conversations with women on the phone and in the pub and late at night about the misogyny, and I've heard quotes, and I've reiterated the quotes that I've received, and I've never named those things, and I've never made people accountable for the things that they've said to me. And the reason that I've done that is because 80% of the funding for Irish theatre goes to a small minority of organisations, and I didn't do that because I was afraid. I was afraid that I'd shout my mouth off and fuck everything up for the rest of my company. And from this day forward, I've decided, inspired by all of you, and particularly Liam Bell, that I'm not going to do that anymore. So I'm making a pledge here right now that I will hold people to account for misogyny, for bias, for inequality, and thank you.
Thank you, Grace. I think, is there anyone up on this side? Yeah. Okay. Can the mic go to you?
Just about 5 minutes left.
Thank you. 5 minutes left, yeah.
As Annie said, there's a lot of emotion in the room here today, and I have to say, on a personal level, there's a lot of emotion from me. So I made a sign that expresses how I feel.
Okay, for those who can't see, it just says WTF.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Question mark.
Because that is the refrain that goes around in my head when I look back at my career and, at the moment, my non-career. And it is with great sadness that I have to describe myself as a ex-playwright. My last experience here at the Abbey, trying to get a play stage for the last 3 years, wore me out, and I actually decided to withdraw from theatre. And that is what happens. Boal talks about the policeman in our head. Women have to be conscious of the fact that in their heads, they have a male artistic director filtering their creativity and censoring their output. You have to be conscious of this, and you have to get rid of that voice and take your place. My name is Pam Boyd, ex-playwright. Okay, thanks.
Anyone else on that side with Hannah?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Mary Moynihan, and I'm from Smashing Times Theatre Company. And well done to everybody who's spoken today. I hope it's captured on camera, because it's really important that this is seen by so many more people, and that we can show it to our daughters and to our sons. The name of Smashing Times Theatre Company, we took the name because at the suffragette period, the suffragette movement had a campaign at the beginning of the century to smash the windows of public buildings, and it was referred to as the Smashing Times period of the suffragette movement, because they were smashing windows because they were excluded from the power structures. And that's still happening today. And I think a big question we have to look at is not asking for power, but how do you take power? And that's a debate that has to be had. How do we take power? And also as well, you don't have to be on the stage of the Abbey to be successful. There's amazing, brilliant work happening around the country, outside, in different spaces. And a big question to look at is, why is there no recognition or media coverage or different types of coverage for the type of work that is happening around the country? Our funding, very important, the funding. We have a very radical tradition of women in Ireland going back to 1916, that women's history has been airbrushed. Women have always done it for themselves. They are always out there doing it, but the stories aren't being told, and that's really important. And I would just finish by saying, I don't know if I agree with quotas, but yet They're now saying in politics that research is showing unless you have 30 to 40% female representation, only at that level can change actually happen. So that's something that needs to be looked at.
Okay, we're unfortunately very tight on time. I'm going to take one more from the floor, then one from here, and then we'll go to the Abbey statement. I think Fiach is there. So one more up there.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Saoirse Anton. I'm a drama and English student, a writer and a theatre critic. And I just wanted to say that I'm only in my second year of drama. I'm only 19 years old, but I've already seen so much of the problems that everyone is talking about today. And I just want to say that in my class, we've got over half of the class is made up of immensely talented young women. And I'm actually shaking speaking about it, but it makes me sick and sad to think that all of these young women who are immensely, immensely talented and have such passion for what they do would start their career on a back foot because of such a history of internalized misogyny and just bias against women within our industry. And I think it needs to change, and we really need to keep this energy going.
Well
Thank
said,
you.
well said.
Thanks very much for allowing me to speak from the sideline here. I'm an artist, Amanda Coogan is my name, a performance-based artist and a sign language interpreter, as you can see. And I think I really need desperately to make the point that maybe theatre isn't just about literature, and maybe the structures of literary theatre that we kind of live with here in Ireland predominantly is not the way to include women's voices. Maybe there's another way that literature and theatre could be, I'm speaking on the stage of the Abbey in this, but maybe there could be a kind of divorce, and then maybe we can get more women involved in a kind of a grassroots or a roots up development of a theatre experience or a live experience.
Thanks. We leave you the last word from the floor, Amanda. And can I just say apologies to the many more who wished to speak and didn't get in, or who I didn't see. And I'm just sorry, but I think those were really stimulating contributions. And I know the conversation is going to continue well beyond the 3 o'clock watershed that we have. So I'm now going to go to Fiach McAneil, the director of the Abbey, who's just going to say a few words.
Thank you very much.
And to thank you again for facilitating this.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak. I've been given 5 minutes. I've timed it, so it's less than 5 minutes. So I'm conscious that everybody else has kept a limit. On behalf of the board and staff of the Abbey Theatre, I welcome all of you here from all over Ireland for this important and critical meeting. I want to express my gratitude to the voices of the Waking the Feminist movement for their call to action. And congratulations, Leanne. I've also and always considered and used the Abbey stage as a platform for freedom of expression, and today is no different. Today was historical. Today was extremely moving, and I'm extremely humbled. As you can imagine, the events of the last fortnight have prompted me to ask myself some hard questions. Did I adequately explore the canon with modern eyes? Why didn't I redress the opportunity, or rather the predominantly male canon, by making sure my commissions list was predominantly female? Does my brilliant staff feel represented by the programme that they work so hard to deliver? What influences my personal taste? Why do I choose one artist from another? The absence of women from the Waking the Nation programme is not something I can defend. I adore Mee Malzer and I adore what Ali White did, and I apologise to Ali for any slight in terms of her craft, in terms of that beautiful play. And I've seen that play in all parts of the city and all schools being moved by, and certainly the debate that comes out of that with young children, it's just extraordinary. So I salute you, Ali. I was thinking in microscopic detail. I was thinking about the legacy of 1916. I was thinking about war stories, about poverty, about housing, about disenfranchisement. I was thinking about the Middle East. I was thinking about Northern Ireland. I was thinking about international touring. I was thinking about the Abbey Theatre's canon. I was thinking about new commission plays on my desk that were at final draft stage. And I wasn't thinking about gender balance. I did not look up. I did not ensure that our 2016 programme would represent the experience of the nation as a whole, male and female. To use Una Murphy's phrase, rather borrowed phrase, I failed to check my privilege, and I regret that. Privilege is not just about structural social advantages of birth, like being man and white and middle-aged. It's about who gets to talk, it's what Grace is saying, and who has to listen. It's what Gina is saying. I should have stopped to consider how my privilege affects the things I say and do. Society is overwhelmingly biased towards the male narrative, towards me. I see it in the government. I hear it in the voices, or more importantly, the absence of voices on the radio. I should have implicated myself in that issue by checking myself and applying the same analytical eye to my world, the arts world. I'd like to share with you what I've learned over the last fortnight, and indeed today and this afternoon. I have learned that we can't have true artistic freedom until we have gender equality in our industry. As long as female artists continue to be underrepresented in Irish theatre, we're all missing out on important and exciting work. It's painful for me personally, but it's painful to think of the images, stories, and perspectives that have been lost to us already throughout history. I have learned that I should use statistics or stats as a provocation, not accept them as fact. Fewer women enter the playwriting industry than men. Why? What barriers are in place to stop them? What investment can we make to change those numbers for the better? Theatres across the UK and Ireland receive fewer unsolicited scripts from women than they do from men. Why is that? How can we change the system to motivate the many great women playwrights to send them to this theatre? Visibility is what is essential here, and I agree with what Nancy Harris has said. Seeing and producing plays by women on both the stages of the National Theatre. Commissions are vital, but productions are paramount. I learned that a 50-50 gender balance in commissioning won't balance out decades of invisible women. Under the weight of centuries of male privilege and an overwhelming male canon, some positive affirmation intervention is required. For a time, I need to commission more women than men to redress the balance. I can't wait to read the 8 plays by female playwrights we currently have under commission. And I'm excited too by the work yet to come from the 13 talented female graduates of our new playwrights program. I learned to take and to look at initiatives like Tonic Theater work in the UK and the Jubilee project in the US, which is an amazing project, for pathways to sustained gender balance. We want to achieve gender equality on our stages, not just for a season, but for the long term. And I'm listening to what Roshi said, and it's a good idea to start from scratch and start to re-look and re-examine through contemporary eyes, through other eyes, the canon of playwriting over the last couple of 100 years. We have to acknowledge in this theatre today the fact that it will take time and investment for the industry to address inequality, and I won't be found wanting. We have to make an urgent commitment to gender balance so that we don't lose out in the same way in the future. We have Waking the Feminists and all of you on the stage this afternoon to thank you for this wake-up call. The board of the Abbey Theatre have made that commitment this week, and I look forward to working with them, as indeed do the incoming directors. Finally, and more crucially, the most important thing for me and for artistic directors of theatre companies is to listen. Or as Katrina McLaughlin say, be fair, time to listen. And after we have listened, to question the systems, to question the classics, to question our choices, and to do better by both artists and audience. Geraghty.
Thank you very much for that, Fiach, and thank you for the commitment you've given on behalf of the board of the Abbey. I think that's very welcome to hear, and I think it's also very welcome that this space is here today and that we're here in the National Theatre to have this discussion. And now it's a great treat to introduce Lucy Kerbel, who's going to give us, just for 10 minutes, the benefit of her own experience. And Fiach mentioned her work. She's the founder of Tonic Theater, an organisation which supports British theatre to achieve greater gender equality in its workforces and repertoires. So I'll hand over now to Lucy Kerbel.
Thank you very much. Now, everyone today so far has done an amazing job of staying on time, so I'm actually going to put my watch in front of me so I don't screw it up at the last minute for everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's been an absolute delight to sit backstage and listen to all of this, and also to have been invited here to talk today about some of the work that Tonic has been doing on this very subject in the UK. So Tonic was created about 4 or 5 years ago. We're still a very young organisation, but we were created with the specific aim of catalysing a culture shift in UK theatre in regards to gender equality. We were created at a very specific moment, a moment perhaps not unsimilar to this one, which really felt like it was a combined moment of great possibility and also great risk. It was a moment of great possibility because the winds of change were very definitely blowing through UK theatre. There was a new wave of new artistic directors coming into post, many of them themselves women, into important organisations, and they were demonstrably committed to shifting the balance in terms of women's voices and creativity on stage. There were a greater number of women, nowhere near an equal number of women, but a greater number of women who, as artists, were having their work put on the biggest, best resourced, highest profile stages in the country. And I think there was also, just in line with the rest of the country, a resurgence in conversations around feminism and an acknowledgement that we still needed it a great deal. The reason I say it was a moment of risk as well is because I think as accompanies any process of change, there was the significant risk that we would all see the green shoots of change and go, oh, we've done it. I think there is a tendency when something has been as homogenous as UK theatre was, and in many ways remains to be, that as soon as we see a few different faces there, it's really easy to accidentally go, oh, actually, it's quite mixed, we're quite varied. If you're not working out actually whether there are enough female faces rather than just a few female faces, and also who those female faces are and whether they are genuinely representative of the full range of women, then I think there is still a long way to go. So there was a risk in that, and I think also perhaps inherent in the way that we work in the arts, where we all have a huge amount to do, often with not much money or time. It's very easy for our focus to go elsewhere. And I think that something that can easily happen is that a problem is raised, it's pointed out, it's named. I think sometimes the risk is that we can mistake that for being, oh, we've solved it, rather than no, we've simply named it. I think the interesting thing beyond today is, okay, so now what happens? Tonic is a really unusual theatre company in that we don't put on any plays. And that's because when setting the company up about 4 or 5 years ago, I sort of thought, all right, so we're going from a standing start. We have no funding. We could put on a play. That'd be lovely. My background's in directing. We could do a really brilliant play written by a woman about women. I could direct it. But realistically, it would be quite small scale. It would maybe be a two-hander. We could probably afford to do one of those, maybe 2 a year. I knew that wouldn't change anything in the industry. Because the problem is not, as has been expressed so articulate today, the problem is simply not that there are no plays written by women. The problem is not that there are no female directors, no female producers, no female talent. The problem is not that we don't have any young women studying drama or wanting to build a career in this world, or forming the majority of just about any youth theatre company in the country, or participating in amateur dramatics, or indeed in our audiences. That is not the problem. The problem is that too rarely women's ideas, creativity, art gets to be on stages like this one. So for Tonic, it wasn't a case of saying, all right, well, there's actually lots of work already out there on a sort of admittedly wonky platform, let's just load more work onto the wonky platform. Instead, we said, okay, let's look at the platform. And it's been said today, it's about the structures. And we thought, well, actually, on the limited resources we have, on the limited money, energy, capacity, time, rather than us making plays, let's work with people who already do. And above all, let's work with the biggest, highest profile, best resourced institutions across the country, the majority that get, those that get the majority of the public subsidy and the majority of the public's attention. And our thinking was actually if we can work with the Royal Shakespeare Company or the National Theatre, organisations that might be producing 20 productions a year, actually if we can change the way they think and they do and they communicate and they assess what artistic quality is, then we will really begin to shift things. Because nobody has yet been able to give me any scientifically proven evidence that men are somehow biologically better disposed to write plays, or to create lighting designs, or run theatres. So therefore, if men are not biologically better engineered to write plays, if when you put together a season of work, overwhelmingly that work is by men, the problem is not with the women, the problem must be in your structure through which you select which writers you want to commission, which old plays you want to revive and survive through reviving. The problem is in how you build relationships with those writers, with how you communicate with them, with the exchanges you have, with the ambition that you do or don't set for them. I spent quite some time looking at work that had been done in the UK, which was designed to increase diversity in the arts when I was setting up Tonic. And I couldn't find many schemes or initiatives that were specifically about women in theatre, but in terms of other areas of diversity, quite a lot of work had been going on in the last sort of 10 to 15 years. And overwhelmingly, it had not achieved the results that it should have done. There were some definite positive outcomes, but overwhelmingly, considering the time and money and effort and goodwill that went into a lot of them, they didn't achieve as much as they should have done. I could talk all day about why that is, but one key reason I would say is that they tended to focus almost exclusively on the underrepresented group. What is it about that group of people who are not in our workforce or aren't in our audience? What is it about them? And of course, you need to understand that if someone isn't engaging with your organisation, either professionally or as an audience member, of course you need to understand why that is. But what almost never seemed to be happening with those works was that they never encouraged institutions, gatekeepers, to reflect on themselves in tangent with that. To think, how do we make choices? How do we work? And so that is instead at the centre of what Tonic does. So just to give you one example before I know my time is up, our advanced programme was a piece of work that we are actually about to begin again next month. We previously ran the programme in 2013 going into 14, where we worked with a cohort of 11 leading theatres over a 6-month period of time. We worked with their artistic directors, chief executive and senior artistic staff, and we said to them, okay, just choose one question that you want to answer. Don't try and deal with gender equality in a 6-month period. You'll drive yourselves mad and achieve very little. But instead, just work out one thing that's important to you. So one theatre asked about their commissioning process with playwrights. Does it suit men better than women? Another asked, okay, well, what's the trajectory for assistant directors going into directing? How can we ensure that any discrepancy between men and women is removed by us? Somebody else asked, well, why is it that we and our colleagues tend to put plays by women on in the smallest houses, but are less likely to do so on the main stages? And over the course of 6 months, we really looked into that. And it was a combination of them looking outwards at the people they weren't currently working with, or only working with to a certain level, but it was also crucially about them reflecting on themselves in a very, very structured way. Alongside their own line of inquiry then, of course, there were the 10 other lines of inquiries of the other theatres. And what we would do over the course of the process is we'd repeatedly bring those theatres together in a room so they could talk about what they were finding difficult, they could share ideas, they could egg each other on, they could exert very positive peer pressure on one another to do better, And collectively, it was just about dreaming up a new way of being, a more productive, a more successful way of making theatre. What we said to all the organisations from the beginning is that by the end of this process, you will have needed to have come up with an action plan of what you're going to do differently or what you're going to start to do afresh. And all of them in their own way have made tangible changes to the way that they work, both in respect to their original line of inquiry, the question they chose, but because they've the work they did rubbed off on one another, also in response to the other lines of inquiry. So I suppose I offer that as just one example of the kind of work that can really create a tangible shift. Just to finish off, there was something that was said, that group of theatres, they then requested when we got to the end of the programme, they said, oh, can we keep meeting up as a group? We find it really useful, and it really keeps us on track. So now we meet every 6 months. And I ran one of the meetings a few months ago, and so we had a lot of those artistic directors in a room, and one of them, who's a white man, he was sort of pondering, we were having a conversation, and he said, we were talking about leadership, and he said, so I guess what we're saying here is it's not about getting women to the top of organisations, it's about getting feminists to the top of organisations. And I went, but actually I think there is something in that, because this is not something for the women to do on their own. It has to involve all of us, regardless of gender. If you're not a feminist, go and find out about it, because I promise you, it's brilliant. So, and I think I'm the final person speaking today. So can I just, I think we should just say a huge congratulations to everybody that's made this.
Yet. We're not done yet. There's more. I'd now like to call... Will you wrap up?
Okay, it's been a fantastic day. Thank you all so much for your contributions from the stage, from the floor. It's been a real wake-up call, I think, for all of us. Just as Panti had a noble call asking us to check ourselves for homophobia, so I think all of us are left today knowing that we need to check ourselves, to ensure that gender is visible, to ensure that we no longer just remark when there's one woman on a panel, oh, look, isn't she great? But to check ourselves, that we note that when there's a manel, an all-male panel, that we note that that's remarkable. Because the problem is not that there's only 28% of women's voices on peak time current affairs radio shows, or that there's only 16% of women among our TDs. The problem is that there's 72% of men's voices on peak time current affairs radio, and 84% of our TDs are male. That's the problem that we're seeking to challenge through the gender quota legislation in politics. That's the problem that we're seeking to challenge here today in the arts. But the arts are only mirroring the real exclusion of women and the real invisibility of women across public life in Ireland. And just to say finally, that's why today's discussion is so timely. That's why it's so important that we have this sort of discussion and this sort of conversation. I know this conversation will continue. I really want to thank the Waking the Feminists organisers. I know Sarah's going to do the final wrap up and thank you now. But just to say, you know, why are we talking about Waking the Feminists now? Well, in the words of the Canadian Prime Minister, when asked why he chose half of his cabinet members are women, he said, because it's 2015. We're awake because it's 2015. Thank you.
On behalf of Waking the Feminists, a sincere thank you to all the Abbey board, the director and CEO, Senator McAneil, to Senator Ivana Bacek, to our amazing colleagues who have pulled off an incredible amount of work to get us here, Rough Magic for the use of the space all this week, the students and volunteers from the Lear Academy, and to all our colleagues in the theatre and the arts, we thank you for engaging so forthrightly and passionately over the past 2 weeks. Thanks to Lucy for giving us some idea of the many ways forward. How can we, in the arts, interrogate and reflect society with integrity if we do not hold our own leaders to account and interrogate our own practices? It has been a difficult, humbling, and yet tremendous time. Frankly, it has been a difficult 100 years. I feel deep sadness and fury for what we have lost, for talent cut short, snuffed out or exiled, for important conversations muted. Today we have heard something about the true cost of that for all of us. But it will be tragic and indefensible if our daughters and our granddaughters have to stand here again in 50 years or in 100 years' time to demand the recognition of our equality. Equality for women matters on this stage, on every stage, and in every sphere. We do not stand here and politely request it. We stand here in our full strength and brilliance and demand what is our right as 50% of the population, equality and economic parity. This is just the start of the conversation, of the discussion on the solutions. Ultimately, it's simple. Commit fully to supporting and programming more women artists, putting their work centre stage. We have all more work to do to achieve full equality, inclusion and diversity in theatre. We will continue that work together with respect and with honesty. But alongside those conversations, there must be action, and from their action, there must be results. In this National Theatre, funded by a woman, co-founded by a woman, and with a mighty queen charging forth on its logo, this call goes forward from this stage to every stage, to the leader of all theatres and arts organisations. We must look at our programming practices, and beyond that, look at our commissioning, and look at our marketing, and our pay and contracting and employment structures. Look at everything we do and root out this blight of inequality. Listen up. We are all ready for you. Get ready for us. Now. Those three women are not spinning in their graves. Their wake is over. Today they are rising with us. It's time just now for some respect.